Welcome to the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube. This is our Awakening Together weekly gathering. Each and every week we have a different minister who speaks. If you'd like to attend our services live, please visit our website awakening-together.org. Click on Online Sanctuary on the main menu. Then, How to Enter the Sanctuary. Our services are held Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you. George, are you in Levita? Woohoo! Welcome. It took some time this year, but we're happy to have you here with us. And welcome everyone else. I'm happy to see you here virtually. We're going to start our Sunday morning weekly gathering by greeting each other on the board. And Sina, if you would play our song, Awakening by Deborah Pamela and Mitten, I'd appreciate it. All right. So again, welcome to our weekly gathering. Today's weekly gathering is called Who is Awakening Together? We could also say, who are we as an organized assembly of people? Why does Awakening Together exist? And how do we benefit from its current existence? Also, I could say, how can we screw it up? Because that would be the ego's preference. The ego's preference would be that we miss this opportunity that's right here in front of us, that we somehow shift Awakening Together to help us feel comfortable, to help us stay in our comfort zone, rather than allowing Awakening Together to push us outside of our comfort zone so that we continue our journey up through consciousness, up through the code, which George talked about last week, to higher and higher levels of consciousness. My talk today is for everyone, but I will be honest. It is specifically geared towards those who are leaders or will one day be leaders of Awakening Together. Because Awakening Together was set up to have many leaders, not just one. And it is the leaders who may actually benefit the most from its organization. It's also the leaders who have the greatest opportunity to screw it up. So by leaders, I am referring, of course, to Jacqueline, the president minister. But I'm also referring to the board of directors, the member board of trustees, to everyone who serves on a subcommittee, to everyone who serves as an employee, and to all of the ministers. And you may notice that I just now covered a whole lot of you guys, right? Those who are not in the leadership role can still benefit from today's weekly gathering, but it is more strongly geared towards the leaders. The statement of purpose that I've selected today, it was kind of interesting because when I read both the description that leads into our statement of purpose, our primary statement of purpose, and our 5 core values, in order to select a statement of purpose for today's gathering, I thought, well, of course, all of this applies. But when I read the very, very last core value, I thought, but that applies the most to this talk. That core value is we accept all forms as temporary appearances permitted through enduring awareness of self. We live this value by honoring all appearances and all experiences while continually reflecting on changeless truth. And I think that's the value that applies the most to the leaders of the organization as regards this talk. Because when you're a leader of an organization, again, whether you're the president, minister, the board of directors, a trustee, someone serving on a subcommittee, a part of your job is what we would call solving the problems that arise, right? And the posture that we need to take is not to fall back into our egoic problem-solving methods, whatever they may be, but to stay with core value number 5. We accept all forms, including this, which we are currently working on, which it's our job to work on. We accept even this situation as a temporary appearance, which is permitted through consciousness. In other words, there's nothing wrong with this issue that we're currently working on. It's intended to be here. It's a gift of consciousness. It's permitted through consciousness. Doesn't mean we aren't to work on it. That's also to be here, but it's not anything to resist, right? It's here to help us rise in consciousness. So we accept all forms as temporary appearances permitted through enduring awareness of self. Everything is accepted. Everything is permitted. Everything is allowed. Now we live this value by honoring this appearance. Imagine that, honoring this current challenge rather than resisting it, judging it. We live this value by honoring all appearances and all experiences while we continually reflect on changeless truth. So this is why I have selected this core value for today. But before we jump into the meat of this weekly gathering, we have announcements. So let me share our announcements. I want to tell you guys, first of all, I'm a little bit shaky today. I just want to say that right up front. I never know whether people can notice these things or not. But when I went to pick up the paper, I could feel it shaking. So the paper with the announcements. The reason that I'm shaky today is because I had an insight this morning that the ego is not at all happy with. This insight is going to allow me to pick up some temporary anchors that I may have laid down because I'm in a comfort zone, to pick those up and to begin to move forward again. But the ego never, ever, ever likes these kinds of insights. Up until the death of the ego is to get you to stay in your comfort zone. That's what it wants you to do, to stay in your comfort zone and even slip back if it can get you to do that. And again, this is also related to the talk today, because we can use awakening together to stay in our comfort zone or to pick up our anchors and move forward. But because I had an insight this morning that was very personal to where I am on my journey and what my next steps are, my ego is as enraged as it gets. To be honest, its loudest volume now is not the same as its loudest volume used to be. I'll be honest about that. It used to get a whole lot louder, but it's still as loud as it gets now. And that's just where I'm at today. So I have the ability to let it be in the background, let it throw its little temper tantrum while I continue connected to wisdom. But at the same time, there is some shakiness here. So I just want to share that in case you see the paper shaking or hear the paper shaking. All right. Yep, it's definitely shaking. I don't know. Can you guys see it? See? Yeah, it's definitely shaking. All right. So I'm going to see if I can read this shaky piece of paper. All right. So let's go into a prayer. First of all, I want to say that I am really grateful that we are here today. I know that what is going to be said today is helpful to everyone who listens, and especially helpful to the current and future leaders of Awakening Together. I am thrilled to have the opportunity to pass this information on. And of course, I ask inner wisdom to speak every word. This organization is and has always been intended to be yours. It was founded by the right mind of consciousness, not by Regina Dawn Akers. It belongs to the right mind of consciousness. And it is my prayer that its leaders will always do their best to tune into the right mind of consciousness. So that is the true leader of this organization. And with that said, I pray, amen. All right, so now I get to turn the mic over a little bit, which is good because, again, in this shaky condition, I could use a little break for a second. So I am going to turn it over to Rhoda. And Rhoda is going to be reading a section from Dr. David Hawkins' book, which is titled Discovery of the Presence of God, Devotional Nonduality. Now, before she starts reading, let me just give a little bit of context for the reading. The name of this section is Identification and Characteristics of Spiritual Truth, Integrous Teachers, and Teachings. One thing that Dr. David Hawkins is big on is helping us tell the difference between the true and the false, which it would include a teacher, a teaching, and I'm going to add organization. He didn't put that in here, but I'm going to add that. A teacher, a teaching, and an organization that is aligned with truth. The difference between that and a teacher, a teaching, or an organization that is not aligned with truth, which means if we begin to run this organization from our egos, we will not be aligned with truth and we will not be in harmony with what's about to be read. If we are leading this organization from the right mind of consciousness, we will be in harmony with that right mind and in harmony with truth, and we will be in alignment with what is about to be read. So you could kind of consider this, qualities or characteristics that we can test ourselves by to see if we're leading from the right mind of consciousness or if we have slipped back into our ego. So with that said, Rhoda, can't speak anymore. I turn this over to you.
Thank you, Regina. So as Regina said, this is a list for us to be able to identify the characteristics of spiritual truth, integrous teachers and teachings, and Regina added organization. And just so that the reading is clear, because I noticed, if you can see this, it's actually a list. So there's a number, and then there's a word, and then there's a definition. So I will do my best to pause so that you can hear the words and then the definition. All right. So characteristic number 1 is universality. Truth is true at all times and places, independent of culture, personalities, or circumstances. Characteristic number 2, non-exclusionary. Truth is all-inclusive, non-secretive, and non-sectarian. Characteristic number 3 is availability. It is open to all, non-exclusive. There are no secrets to be revealed, hidden, or sold, and no magic formula or mysteries. Characteristic number 4 is integrity of purpose. There is nothing to gain or lose. Characteristic number 5 is non-sectarian. Truth is not the exposition of limitation. Characteristic number 6 is independent of opinion. Truth is nonlinear and not subject to limitations of intellect or form. Kind of sounds like the song you just said, the brain is stupid. Characteristic number 7, it is devoid of positionality. Truth is not anti-anything. Falsehood and ignorance are not its enemies, but merely represent its absence. And if you're keeping count, there are 39 characteristics. Characteristic number 8, no requirements or demands. There are no required memberships, dues, regulations, oaths, rules, or conditions. Number 9, non-controlling. Spiritual purity has no interest in the personal lives of aspirants or in clothing, dress, style, sex lives, economics, family patterns, lifestyles, or dietary habits. Number 10, it is free of force or intimidation. There is no brainwashing, adulation of leaders, training rituals, indoctrinations, or intrusions into private life. Number 11, it is non-binding. There are no regulations, laws, edicts, contracts, or pledges. Number 12, freedom. Participants are free to come and go without persuasion, coercion, intimidation, or consequences. There is no hierarchy. Instead, there is voluntary fulfillment of practical necessities and duties. Number 13, commonality. Recognition is a consequence of what one has become rather than a result of ascribed titles, adjectives, or trappings. Number 14, inspirational. Truth eschews and avoids glamorization, seduction, and theatrics. Number 15, non-materialistic. Truth is devoid of neediness of worldly wealth, prestige, pomp, or edifices. Number 16, self-fulfilling. Truth is already total and complete and has no need to proselytize or gain adherents, followers, or sign-up members. Number 17, it is detached. There is non-involvement in world affairs. Number 18, benign. Truth is identifiable along a progressive gradient. It has no opposite and therefore no enemies to castigate it or oppose. Number 19, it is non-intentional. Truth does not intervene or have agenda to propose, inflict, or promulgate. Number 20, it is non-dualistic. All transpires by virtue of intrinsic, and in parentheses it says karmic, propensity within the world within the field by which potentially, I'm going to sort through that one again. All transpires, so the characteristic is number 20 is non-dualistic. All transpires by virtue of intrinsic, in parentheses, karmic, propensity within the field by which potentiality manifests as actuality rather than by cause and effect. Number 21, tranquility and peace. There are no issues or partialities. There is no desire to change others or impose on society. The effect of higher energies is innate and not dependent on propagation or effort. I love this. God does not need help any more than gravity needs the help of an apple's falling off the tree. Number 22, equality. This is expressed in reverence for all of life in all its expressions and merely avoids that which is deleterious rather than opposing it. Number 23, non-temporality. Life is realized to be eternal and physicality to be a temporality. Life is not subject to death. Number 24, beyond proof. That which is provable is linear, limited, and a product of intellectualization and mentation. Reality needs no agreement. Reality is not an acquisition, but instead is a purely spontaneous, subjective realization when the positionalities of the dualistic ego are surrendered. Number 25, mystical. The origination of truth is spontaneous effulgence, radiance, and illumination, which is the capital R revelation that replaces the illusion of a separate individual self, the ego, and its mentation. Number 26 is ineffable, not capable of definition. Radical subjectivity is experiential. It is a condition that replaces the former. With this event, context replaces content, devoid of temporality and beyond time. Reality does not exist in time, nor of it, beyond it, nor outside of it, and it has no relationship to that which is an artifice of mentation. It is therefore beyond all nouns, adjectives, or verbs, transitive or intransitive. Number 27 is simplistic. Seeing some irony here. One sees the intrinsic beauty and perfection of all that exists beyond appearance and form. Number 28, affirmative. Truth is beyond opinion or provability. Confirmation is purely by its subjective awareness. However, it is identifiable by consciousness calibration techniques. Number 29, it is non-operative. Truth does not do anything or cause anything. It is everything. Number 30, invitational, as contrasted with promotional or persuasive. Number 31, it is non-predictive, because capital R reality is nonlinear. It cannot be localized or encoded in restriction of form, such as secret messages, codes, numbers, and inscriptions, or hidden in runes, stones, the dimensions of the pyramid, the DNA, or the nostril hairs of the camel. Truth has no secrets. The capital R reality of God is omnipresent and beyond codification or exclusivity. Codes are indicative of man's imagination and are not the capriciousness of capital D divinity. Number 32, it is non-sentimental. Emotionality is based on perception. Compassion results from the discernment of truth. Number 33, it is non-authoritarian. There are no rules or dictates to be followed. Number 34, it is non-egotistic. Teachers are respected but reject personal adulation or specialness. Number 35, it is educational. It provides information in a variety of formats and ensures availability. Number 36, it is self-supporting, neither mercenary nor materialistic. Number 37, freestanding. It is complete without dependence on external or historical authorities. Number 38, it is natural. It is devoid of induced altered status of consciousness or manipulations of energies by artificial exercises, postures, breathing, or dietary rituals. And in parentheses, it says, i.e., non-reliance on form or physicality, no invoking of entities or others. And then the final one, number 39, is complete. It is devoid of exploitation or gain. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhoda. So if there's anybody who's interested, because I know just hearing that list, it might not have even been digestible. So if there's anyone who is interested in reviewing the list more slowly and more contemplatively, again, it came out of this book, which is called Discovery of the Presence of God, Devotional Nonduality by David R. Hawkins. And it looks like it begins in this book on page 179. That's where the list begins. So, what do I say? Start with just a brief bit of history, which some of you may know. In 2012, I was guided to take a year of what I call increased silence. And the reason I call it increased silence is because my daughter came home from school at 4 p.m. every day. And at that point, the silence ended and the mother role kicked back in, right? But from the time she left for school, well, actually before, because I would get up before her. So from early in the morning, let's say 5 a.m.-ish, with a brief break of getting her on the bus, all the way until about 4 p.m. in the afternoon, I was in silence and contemplation. There were a lot of insights that year. I would assume there was a jump in spiritual consciousness that year. In fact, I can pretty much pinpoint that jump occurred in May of 2012. At the end of the year, in December of 2012, I received very clear guidance to start a church and to call it Awakening Together. And I was given the purpose and the 5 core values. And some of you may have heard the 5 core values came so quickly. I was standing in the kitchen when they started pouring into my mind. I had nothing to write on. I actually grabbed a napkin and they were written on a napkin. And if you go back and look at this list that Dr. David Hawkins has given us, you will be able to star some of these items as really being aligned with our core values, or our core values are aligned with them. You'll see our core values in this list. It's here. So you can tell that we were intended to be an organization that is aligned with truth. Church, why church? I've actually never received an answer to that. I don't have an answer to that. But what I have seen is that there are benefits to church being a church. For example, there's this form, I think it's called a 990, that has to be filled out by all nonprofits. That is, oh my gosh, it's awful. I mean, it could take anywhere between 40 to 80 hours to fill it out. And that's if you kept really good records all year. Churches don't have to fill that form out. There are like, in other words, our life, this is the only reason I can come up with, but I will tell you that this was not given as guidance. This is just what I've observed in our lifetime as Awakening Together. Our life as an organization is simpler as a church than it would be as a nonprofit, which means, believe it or not, there's actually less work we have to do to stay a legal organization. Therefore, we can spend more time on our spiritual focus. And that's the only thing that I've ever observed as to why we should be a church. I think it's purely practical. But that's my own deduction. Guidance never said why. Guidance just said start a church. At the same time, in order to maintain the benefit of being a church, there are certain requirements we have to meet. There are things that the IRS is the one that determines whether you're a church or not. And there are things that the IRS imagines makes you a church, and they've put their imagination into law. And if we want to keep this church benefit, we have to kind of align with their imagination. But notice I'm holding this lightly, right? I'm holding this lightly. I'm even calling it their imagination that they put into law. Some of those things are, believe it or not, they expect us to have some rules for members and benefits of membership and, and all this kind of stuff. So we have lightly put those things in, but we hold them lightly. They are just intended to maintain our status as church. Like before you become a member, you agree to uphold our purpose and our 5 core values. That's one of the ways that we prove to the IRS that we are a church. It is not meant to be an oath in the way secret societies have oaths, you understand. Okay, so I just want to put these things out there in the very beginning. So if you were to go through the list, you might say, wow, it says no oaths, but our ministers take oaths. Well, again, we're just kind of playing along with the game, right? We're not a secret society, which is really what Dr. David Hawkins is talking about. Shortly after I received the guidance to start a church, I started organizing people together. Jacqueline was one of the very first ones, her and her husband, Tom. And then we brought in a member board of trustees, and then we brought in a board of directors, and, and started forming this organization. And so for the first time in 8 years, I was working on work teams. Because, I had left my job in 2005, and I had been purely focused on my spiritual path and on scribing, right, and all that kind of stuff. And now suddenly in 2013, I'm thrown back into what felt a lot like a work environment. It was a lot like a work environment. And what I found emerged is what I called professional Regina. Before I started the spiritual path, I had come up the professional chain, and I was a director of a nationwide department in a fairly large company. So I had some authority. And of course, I operated purely egotistically. I mean, maybe occasionally some intuition kicked in there. I think it did. But, let's call it 90% ego, 10% intuition, shall we? So when I started leading Awakening Together, I noticed professional Regina kicking back in. I could feel her because she had been gone for 8 years. And I immediately realized that through leading this organization, that's one of the things I was here to transcend. I was here to transcend the egoic leadership principles I had learned and respected, my egoic ways of dealing with conflict in the workplace, my egoic opinions, my belief that I was right, that I knew more than anybody else. I mean, all that stuff that was actually a part of a fairly successful professional Regina. Through observation, I think that a large number of people who are put in leadership roles within Awakening Together are here to transcend those same things. I think that falling back on our successful professional selves is falling back into our comfort zone. And Awakening Together is here to help the leaders transcend that, I'll call it workplace or professional comfort zone, and learn to make decisions, solve problems, and lead an organization in a completely different way, which we call guidance or intuition. And I know from my own experience that it is challenging to put aside a successful professional persona when a similar situation is provided through Awakening Together. One of the things, and we sat down, this founding board of directors and founding trustees, we sat down and we created 2 philosophies. One philosophy was a financial philosophy, and one philosophy was a growth philosophy. Because we knew that this is where organizations sometimes get off track. They get off track worrying about the money, watching the money, and they get off track worrying about the members. Are people coming? Are people going? Right? What's going on here? And again, if you read what Dr. David Hawkins has written about in this list, truth doesn't care about either of those things. Truth doesn't care about the money. Truth doesn't care about the growth or lack thereof. And so we knew this, and we knew that this is where organizations can get off track. So we created two philosophies, one of which was a financial philosophy and one of which is a growth philosophy. And you can look these up on our website under About and Governance, and then you'll see a link for our policies and procedures. And our growth philosophy and our financial philosophy are there. I'm not going to read them to you, though. I want to tell you the heart of the discussions because, that's really what's intended, right? That's the spirit of what's within those words. The growth philosophy is coming to discuss first. The spirit of the growth philosophy is that we will not be at all concerned about whether people are joining Awakening Together or leaving Awakening Together. Although we keep membership lists, because again, this is something that the IRS imagines churches do, and so we do it. It's not something that we're focused on. We're not going in and counting how many members are there, in our hearts, in our minds. We're not going in saying, wow, who's leaving? Wow, who's coming? Are we growing? Are we shrinking? That's not our interest. I repeat, that is not our interest. Our interest is this. Are we sincere devotees? The assumption within the growth philosophy is that if we are being very sincere devotees, it is probable that we will also attract sincere devotees, right? Like attracts like. So our business isn't, are we growing? Are we shrinking? Our business for each and every one of us is, am I being the most sincere devotee as consistently as possible for me? Is this where my attention is? Is this where my focus is? Is this where my heart is? Does truth matter more than the organization or anything else? The financial philosophy is similar. And I think this gets very difficult for the board of directors to accept. Not intended as a comment on individuals on our current board. I meant that as a generalization. It's a board's responsibility to watch the finances, right? They look at the budget. They look at the financial reports. They look at, do we have enough money? Therefore, I think it's very difficult for people who are coming from professional habits to realize, even though it's our job, it's not our job. Listen to that. That's the balance. Even though it's our job, it's not our job. It has to be held lightly in awareness. Our financial philosophy says that we will always be transparent with our finances. That, of course, is so members can make decisions about donation and such. But making money is not our job. Although we provide the opportunity for donations, focusing on trying to receive money, on trying to have enough money is not our job. Our job is to be a good steward of the money that we have by following intuition in the way that we spend money, in the way that we collect money. Do you realize that, I'm sure you guys know that our retreats are probably among the most inexpensive retreats out there, if not the most inexpensive. And every time a price is set, there's an intuitive feeling, okay, this feels right. This feels right. And guess what? So far it's working. We always have the money we need. The egoic mind might say, but wait a minute. Our 5-day retreats are $250, and so over there is charging $850, and so over there is charging $1,000, and so over there is charging $1,200. We can charge more. That's not our job. Our job is what feels right for us. And hey, notice it's working. In fact, notice it's always worked. The entire time we've been in an organization, what we are charging, where we are trusting for donations, what our expenses are, it's always worked. Why has it always worked? Because we're only watching it lightly. We're following it with intuition. We're paying more attention to ourselves as the spiritual devotee. We're paying more attention to, am I following intuition as I determine this cost, or as I determine whether this is given freely or charged for? We've had ideas come up before in the past when I think people were in their professional egos. Like, first of all, I have never seen a reason to worry about money. We have never been without. Anytime people start worrying about money, they're imagining that we're going to be without someday. We have never been without. Go look at our financial records. We've always had what we needed. And as we've grown, there's been more because it costs more to be bigger, but we still have always had what we needed. But in the past, sitting around the table, when people started imagining this day when we wouldn't have what we needed, ideas have popped up like maybe we should charge for membership. That group over there and that group over there, they charge their members $45 a month or $25 a month. We could do that. Oh, praise the Lord, I had the answer. Churches do not charge membership. Yay. There the church excuse came in handy. Otherwise, I don't know if I could have put the egoic discussion to rest. We got to watch these ideas that we have that are coming from our professional egos, that are imagining a future state where we have a problem when actually, does that problem exist now? We need to remember to follow what the song called our heart. I prefer to call it intuition, guidance. We need to remember, as the song so clearly stated, that our brain is stupid. That is sometimes hard to accept when your brain got you through a very successful worldly profession. I mean, look at Jacqueline. She was a Harvard-trained lawyer, a judge. She knows all kinds of stuff about the law. What if sometimes her legal knowledge is the hindrance rather than the helpmate? Don't get me wrong, it helps too. That's why I use the word sometimes. It helps. But what if sometimes her thinking and the way she's trained to think is actually the hindrance? What if that legal stuff has to be put aside so that intuition can be felt? And I only used her as an example because I know her the best. If I knew Joanne, our chairman of the board, better, I could probably use an example with her. And if I knew Ron, our treasurer, better, I could probably use an example with him. I picked on Jacqueline because of our close association. I apologize, Jacqueline. But, we all have that. We all have something that has worked for us in the past, and we're trying to bring that into Awakening Together, where actually Awakening Together is meant to be the place where we drop it. We're struggling to stay in our comfort zone as leaders and have success in the way that we've always known success to be, when actually even our ideas of success, finances, growth, those are ideas of success, are they not? Are to be dropped. This is what I learned as president minister. And I will tell you briefly, because I noticed the time, briefly a story when I was really tested. It seemed like Awakening Together was going to completely blow up from the inside and cease to exist. It was a time when 3 people had a conflict, which interestingly, I can't even remember the details of now. But I will tell you the roles of the 3 people. One person was an employee of Awakening Together. One person was on one of our boards, and one person was a respected spiritual teacher in Awakening Together. Those were the roles. That's probably important to know. And these 3 people had a conflict that got really big, really fast, and so distorted from each of their point of views that I can't even begin to understand the distortion. I really can't. And so I'm not going to try. You know, the things they were saying that happened, the things they were saying about each other, the things they were saying about me were so far from reality. I can't even understand how they believe these things. I can't even begin to go there. All I can say is the ego was so distorted through this conflict, and that their mind was making stuff up and they were believing what their mind made up. And one person who actually wasn't one of the 3, but he was at the edge of the conflict, and he loves conflict, so he pulled himself into the center, began writing letters to the board of directors and to the person who has always donated my salary, telling them things about me, which again, I do not remember now because I just don't hold on to stuff. But I do remember the spirit of these things, that if I was on the board, or if I was the one that donated for Regina's salary and I read these things, I would have complete doubt. Complete doubt. I would probably instantly quit donating her salary. The board would probably bring her in for some kind of a talk. You know, who knows what would happen. And literally this conflict had the potential to blow up Awakening Together so that it would not continue to exist. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because I want to tell you this is when I was tested. I had to either step in and defend myself and try and save Awakening Together, or stay with my devotion and my guidance. And it was a very rough few weeks, maybe a couple of months, actually. I not once defended myself to anyone. I didn't even respond to 98% of the emails that were flying around. I didn't do anything to try and save Awakening Together. In fact, I was completely surrendered, and I trusted that if Awakening Together ended now, that's because Awakening Together was supposed to end now. And whatever happened next was in the best interest of my awakening. To me, this is the sincere attitude of truth. We don't try to control things. We don't try to make them go in the direction we think they're supposed to go in. We aren't here to make Awakening Together successful in the way of the world's ideas of success. We're not even here to make Awakening Together continue to exist. We're here to wake up, each and every one of us. And the roles we have been put in are more perfect than you know. I assure you. I assure you. You know, I think that every time there's a jump in consciousness, there is at least discomfort, if not extreme pain. The reason for that is we've become comfortable in whatever level of consciousness we're at, and we're leaving what is called our comfort zone. But in order to thrive, we have to leave the comfort zone behind. It's scary not to try and make money in a world where we're told money is security. It's scary not to try and get members or cling to members, or it's scary to watch them leave in a world where we're told an organization's value is based on its membership. But if we fall into those fears, which, by the way, we have two philosophies intended to keep us from falling into those traps. If we fall into those fears, we're failing ourselves. Because every one of us, although we sometimes forget, our real intention is awakening. That's why we're here. By the way, listen to the name, Awakening Together. There's our purpose right there. Not keep this organization together. Not money haven. Right? Awakening together. And remember this. Seek ye first the kingdom. Always, even in business meetings. And all else will be added to you effortlessly. So that's it. I like everybody else does, I talk too long. We only have 4 minutes left. There is an opportunity to donate. Sina will give you that link. And Sina will play my next song that I had selected, which is called Make Me an Instrument. And it's by a band called a Rug Muffin Band. So thank you. It is time for me to go upstairs to breakfast. But if you all would like to continue to discuss this, of course, you can do so in the fellowship 30 minutes that follows. I trust that the heart and spirit of what I said is understood, at least in some level of everyone. And I just ask that you remember, because again, Awakening Together was not founded by Regina Dawn Akers. She was merely the instrument. It was founded by the right mind of consciousness. That's why this organization is here. And if we are to be loyal to a who or a what, that's what we're to be loyal to, the right mind of consciousness. All right, thank you.
You've been watching our online gathering. It happens weekly on Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. To join us live in the sanctuary, visit our website, awakening-together.org. You'll want to click on Online Sanctuary in the main menu, and then in the drop-down menu, look for How to Enter the Sanctuary. Right there at the top of the page is a clickable link. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary and join with you in fellowship. Thank you again for watching. Also, please know that if you'd like to stay connected via the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube, you can subscribe and hit the bell for more notifications. We hope to see you in the sanctuary.